My parents disowned me and cut me out of their will because I'm not their biological. I'm Tomasa Williams, 34 years old, and my life turned upside down when I discovered a devastating family secret. Growing up in a comfortable Connecticut home, I never questioned my place in the world until the truth shattered everything I knew. My parents disowned me when they learned I was searching for my biological family. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but an unexpected inheritance from someone I never met changed everything. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe to hear how I went from losing everything to finding wealth beyond money and a family beyond blood. I grew up in a picturesque Connecticut suburb with Harold and Martha Williams. Our two-story colonial home with its white picket fence embodied the American dream my parents had carefully constructed. Dad worked as a financial advisor, while Mom managed the household with precision and warmth. Our neighborhood was filled with similar families, all striving for that perfect balance of success and happiness. Some of my fondest childhood memories involved weekend activities with my parents. Dad taught me baseball in our backyard, patiently showing me how to swing a bat properly despite my initial awkwardness. "Keep your eye on the ball, Tomasa," he would say, his voice firm but encouraging. Every Saturday morning, I would join Mom in the kitchen, learning family recipes passed down through generations. The smell of cinnamon and apples from our special pie still brings back those memories vividly. School came easily to me. I excelled particularly in literature and writing, earning praise from teachers who encouraged my creativity. "You have a gift with words," my high school English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, once told me. "Your perspective is unique." Those words stayed with me, planting seeds for my future aspirations. Looking back, there were subtle signs that something was different about me. I never quite resembled either parent. While Dad had sandy blonde hair and pale blue eyes, and Mom possessed auburn locks and hazel eyes, my dark brown hair and deep brown eyes stood out in family photos. Relatives would occasionally comment, "She must take after a distant relative," and my parents would quickly change the subject. A more significant moment came when I was 13 and needed emergency surgery for appendicitis. There was confusion at the hospital about my blood type, which didn't match what my parents thought it was. "There must be a mistake in our records," Mom insisted to the medical staff. The discrepancy was dismissed as a clerical error, and life continued normally. As I approached college age, my parents became increasingly controlling about my future. They had always expected me to follow in their footsteps and attend their alma mater, Yale University. "Williams family tradition," Dad would say whenever I mentioned my interest in other schools with stronger journalism programs. My dream was to become a journalist to tell stories that mattered, but my parents dismissed this as an unstable career path. "Finance or law, Tomasa," Dad would say during dinner discussions. "Those are fields with security and respect." Mom would nod in agreement, adding, "We just want what's best for you, darling." I reluctantly applied to Yale and was accepted. Though not pursuing my preferred major, I found my voice at the college literary magazine. That's where I met Julian Thompson, a thoughtful English major with kind eyes and a passion for storytelling that matched my own. We connected instantly over late-night editing sessions and discussions about authors we admired. When I brought Julian home to meet my parents during junior year break, their response was lukewarm at best. "He seems nice enough," Mom said afterward, "but is he really from our circle?" Julian's parents were public school teachers, not the professionals or executives my parents typically associated with. Their reaction bothered me deeply, creating the first significant rift between us. After graduation, I accepted a position at a small but respected newspaper, deliberately choosing a path different from what my parents had planned. Dad barely concealed his disappointment. "All that expensive education for a reporter's salary," he muttered when I shared the news. Mom tried to be supportive, but frequently sent me job listings for corporate communications roles. Julian and I married when I was 26, opting for a small, intimate ceremony rather than the lavish event my parents had envisioned. "We could have given you a proper wedding," Mom lamented for months afterward. The wedding became another point of contention, another way I had failed to meet their expectations. We bought a modest home in a developing neighborhood, started building our careers, and settled into adult life. My relationship with my parents grew increasingly strained. Holiday gatherings became exercises in polite conversation that carefully avoided any meaningful topics. Phone calls grew shorter and less frequent. Each interaction seemed to highlight the growing distance between us, a gap I couldn't quite understand, but felt powerless to bridge. Julian noticed their critical comments, the way they subtly undermined our choices. "They're pretty hard on you," he observed after one particularly tense Thanksgiving dinner. "Nothing I do ever quite measures up," I admitted. It was the first time I had voiced this feeling aloud, and saying it brought both relief and sadness. Despite these tensions, I still considered us a family. Flawed, perhaps, but bound by something unbreakable. I had no idea how wrong I was, or how completely my understanding of family would be challenged in the years to come. 4 years into our marriage, Julian and I decided we were ready to start a family. We had established our careers, saved for a larger home, and felt emotionally prepared for parenthood. What we weren't prepared for was difficulty conceiving. Month after month of disappointment began to take its toll. "Maybe we should see a specialist," Julian suggested gently, after a particularly difficult day when my period arrived yet again. I agreed, and we scheduled appointments with a fertility clinic recommended by friends who had gone through similar struggles. Dr. Rivera, our fertility specialist, was thorough and compassionate. "Before we start any treatments, we need comprehensive testing for both of you," she explained during our initial consultation. The battery of tests included genetic screening, which seemed routine at the time, but would ultimately change everything. 2 weeks later, we returned to discuss our results. Dr. Rivera seemed slightly uncomfortable as she reviewed my file. "There's something unusual here," she began carefully. "According to your medical records, your blood type is AB, but your parents would not be able to have a child with this blood type if they are indeed type A and O as you indicated." My first reaction was confusion. "There must be a mistake in the testing," I suggested, remembering the similar issue during my appendectomy years before. "We ran the test twice," Dr. Rivera replied gently. "Blood type is inherited in specific patterns. It's scientifically impossible for parents with A and O blood types to have a child with AB blood." The implications hung in the air between us. Julian reached for my hand as Dr. Rivera continued. "There could be several explanations, including the possibility that one or both of your parents are not your biological parents." The drive home was silent, my mind racing with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Julian finally spoke as we pulled into our driveway. "What do you want to do with this information, Tomasa?" "I don't know," I whispered. "Maybe there's some medical explanation we don't understand. I need to think." Several weeks later, my parents called asking for help. They were downsizing, planning to sell the family home and move to a retirement community in Florida. "We need help sorting through the attic," Mom explained. "There are decades of memories up there." Julian encouraged me to go. "Maybe spending time with them will give you perspective," he suggested, "and you could discreetly look for any documents that might explain the blood type issue." The attic was dusty and cramped, filled with boxes labeled in my mother's precise handwriting. Christmas decorations, tax records, Tomasa's school projects. I worked methodically, helping Mom decide what to keep and what to donate. Dad occasionally appeared with glasses of iced tea before retreating to his study. Near the back wall, partially hidden behind an old dresser, I discovered a lockbox I had never seen before. Unlike the other neatly labeled containers, this one was unmarked. "What's this?" I asked, pulling it into the light. Mom's face paled. "Just some old financial documents," she said quickly. "Your father handles those. Leave it for him." Her reaction sparked my curiosity. After she went downstairs to prepare lunch, I examined the box more closely. It was locked, but the key was taped to its underside, a hiding place so obvious it seemed almost deliberate, as if someone wanted these documents to be found eventually. Inside were official-looking papers yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I unfolded the top document and read the heading, "Certificate of Adoption." Below were my name, birth date, and the names of Harold and Martha Williams listed as adoptive parents. The birth parents' information was minimal, just a first name for the mother, Francine. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I heard Mom calling from downstairs but couldn't respond. When she found me sitting on the attic floor surrounded by the papers, she gasped. "You weren't supposed to find those," she whispered. "Is it true?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Am I adopted? The silence stretched between us until Dad appeared in the doorway. His expression hardened when he saw the open lockbox. Martha, what's going on here? She found the papers, Harold. Mom replied, her voice trembling. What followed was the most difficult conversation of my life. Sitting at the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of family meals, my parents reluctantly confirmed what the documents revealed. I was indeed adopted as an infant, the child of a teenage mother who couldn't raise me. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, tears streaming down my face. All these years, all the times I asked why I looked different. Why did you lie? We wanted you to feel like you were fully ours, Mom explained, reaching for my hand, which I pulled away. The adoption agency recommended making a clean break, saying it would be less confusing for you. Less confusing than discovering my entire identity is based on a lie, I countered, anger rising alongside my hurt. Dad's response was defensive. We gave you everything. A beautiful home, the best education opportunities many can only dream of. We are your real parents in every way that matters. Except you kept the truth from me. I had a right to know. My voice broke as the implications sank in. Do I have biological siblings? Is my birth mother still alive? What about medical history I should know about? My questions clearly made them uncomfortable. It was a closed adoption, Dad said firmly. Those records are sealed for good reasons. It's better to leave the past in the past. Julian was supportive when I called him sobbing from my car after leaving my parents' house. Come home, he said gently. We'll figure this out together. That night, as we talked through what had happened, Julian helped me see the situation with clarity. They're probably scared, he suggested. They might fear losing you to your biological family. But hiding this from me for 34 years. How could they think that was right? I wondered aloud, staring at the ceiling of our bedroom. I don't know, Julian admitted. But what do you want to do now that you know? The answer came to me with surprising clarity. I need to find out where I come from, who my biological parents are. It's part of my story, and I have a right to know it. The following weekend, we had dinner with my parents. They acted as if nothing had changed, steering conversation toward neutral topics like their Florida home search. When I tentatively mentioned wanting to search for my birth parents, Dad abruptly changed the subject. Mom looked pained, but remained silent. The message was clear: this topic was not welcome. As we drove home, I realized the distance between us had grown into a chasm. They're never going to support this, are they? I asked Julian. Maybe they just need time, he suggested, but his tone lacked conviction. Deep down, we both sensed that my search for truth would come at a price neither of us yet understood. The decision to search for my biological family wasn't made lightly. I spent weeks researching adoption search methods, joining online forums for adoptees, and considering the potential consequences. Julian supported me completely, spending evenings helping me navigate the complex web of adoption laws and search techniques. Your parents might come around once they see how important this is to you, he reassured me, though I could tell he had doubts. My parents' reaction to my initial questions had been so negative that I hesitated to bring up the subject again. When I finally gathered the courage to tell them I had decided to search, their response confirmed my worst fears. This is a mistake, Tomasa, Dad said firmly during our phone call. Nothing good will come from digging up the past. I need to know where I come from, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. It doesn't change how I feel about you and Mom. We'll see about that, he replied cryptically before ending the call. My first step was hiring Patricia Sandoval, a private investigator specializing in adoption cases. With her gray-streaked hair and kind eyes, Patricia projected both competence and compassion when we met at her small office. Closed adoptions from that era present challenges, she explained, but not insurmountable ones. The laws have changed over time, and we have tools now that didn't exist when you were born. She outlined a strategy that combined traditional investigative techniques with more modern approaches like DNA testing. Many adoptees are finding biological family through ancestry databases, she explained. Even if you match with distant cousins, it can provide valuable clues. I submitted DNA samples to 2 major testing companies and waited anxiously for results. Meanwhile, Patricia worked through legal channels to request non-identifying information about my birth parents, which was all that Connecticut law allowed without court orders or consent from the biological family. The DNA results arrived first. I had matches with several distant cousins, third and fourth relations, who shared small percentages of my genetic makeup. None were close enough to provide immediate answers, but Patricia saw this as progress. "We can build family trees from these matches and look for intersections," she explained. Weeks turned into months of painstaking research. Julian celebrated small victories with me and provided comfort during disappointments. My parents, however, grew increasingly distant. Their calls became less frequent, often cut short, when I mentioned any progress in my search. 4 months into our investigation, we had a breakthrough. Patricia called one evening, her voice charged with excitement. "I found information about your birth mother," she announced. "Her name was Francine Cooper. She was 17 when you were born." My heart raced as I processed this information. "Was, you said, was?" Patricia's tone softened. "I'm sorry, Tomasa. Records indicate she passed away about 10 years ago. Cancer, according to the death certificate." I sat down heavily, Julian's arm immediately around my shoulders. The knowledge that I would never meet my birth mother hit me with unexpected force. "What else do you know about her?" I managed to ask. "She never married but had 2 other children later in life. You have half-siblings, Tomasa, a brother and sister, Sam and Lily Cooper. They live in Arizona." "Do they know about me?" My voice barely above a whisper. "Based on what I've gathered, probably not. Your adoption was closed, and there's no indication Francine told her later children about you." In the following weeks, Patricia uncovered more information. My biological father, Aaron Cooper, was still alive and also living in Arizona. He had been Francine's high school boyfriend, only 18 when I was born. They had separated shortly after my birth, and he had gone on to marry someone else and have a family of his own. Meanwhile, one of my DNA matches had responded to my message. Elaine Cooper, who turned out to be my biological father's sister, was cautiously willing to share information. "I remember when Francine was pregnant," she wrote in a lengthy email. "Both families were against them keeping the baby. They were too young, still in high school with no means to support themselves, let alone a child. Francine's parents threatened to kick her out if she didn't agree to adoption." Elaine's email painted a picture of 2 scared teenagers pressured by their families into giving up their child. "Aaron was heartbroken," she wrote. "He wanted to find a way to keep you, but neither of them had any resources or support. The decision haunted them both for years." She included a photo of Francine from their high school yearbook. Looking at my birth mother's face for the first time was overwhelming. I saw my own eyes staring back at me, the same curve of the mouth, the same dimple in the left cheek that had always made me feel out of place in William's family photos. Each new discovery pulled me further into this unknown family's orbit, while simultaneously pushing me away from the parents who had raised me. When I excitedly told Mom about finding my birth father, her response was chilling. "I don't understand why you need to pursue this," she said, her voice tight with disapproval. "We gave you everything. Wasn't that enough?" "This isn't about what you gave me," I tried to explain. "It's about understanding who I am completely." Dad was even more direct during our next conversation. "This obsession with your real family is hurtful, Tomasa. We are your real family. These strangers gave you away." "They were teenagers without options," I defended, surprised by my protective feelings toward people I had never met. "And now you want to abandon the people who actually raised you for people who discarded you," he replied harshly. Julian became increasingly concerned about the deteriorating relationship with my parents. "Maybe we should consult a family therapist," he suggested. "Someone who specializes in adoption issues could help your parents understand your perspective." I agreed to try, but when I proposed the idea to my parents, Dad dismissed it immediately. "We don't need a stranger telling us how to feel about our own daughter searching for replacement parents." Meanwhile, Julian researched adoptee rights and legal aspects of my situation. "You should know," he told me one evening, "that adult adoptees have legally recognized rights to their identities. What you're doing isn't wrong, regardless of how your parents are reacting." His reassurance strengthened my resolve. When Elaine offered to introduce me to Aaron and my half-siblings via email, I accepted without hesitation. The possibility of connecting with biological family outweighed my fear of further alienating my adoptive parents. What I didn't yet understand was just how high the cost of that decision would be. After weeks of email exchanges with my biological father and half-siblings, we arranged to meet in person. Aaron suggested I visit them in Phoenix, where they all lived relatively close to each other. Julian immediately took time off work to accompany me, his unwavering support a constant throughout this emotional journey. Before leaving, I felt I needed to inform my parents about the trip. Though our communication had grown increasingly strained, keeping such a significant step from them seemed wrong. I called on a Sunday afternoon when I knew they would both be home. Mom, Dad, I wanted to let you know that Julian and I are traveling to Arizona next week, I began cautiously. I'm going to meet Aaron, my biological father, and my half-siblings. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice ice cold. So you've made your choice then? This isn't about choosing, I protested. I'm not replacing you. I just need to know this part of myself. Tomasa, Mom interjected, her voice quavering. Do you have any idea how this makes us feel, after everything we've done for you, all the sacrifices we made? I'm grateful for everything you did, I assured her. This doesn't erase our 34 years together. Dad's voice rose in anger. Apparently it does. You found out you're not biologically ours and suddenly we're disposable. Is that how little our relationship means to you? That's not fair, I objected, tears welling in my eyes. I'm not disposing of anyone. I'm just trying to understand my complete history. You have a choice to make, Tomasa. Dad continued, his tone leaving no room for compromise. Your real family who raised you and loved you, or these strangers who share nothing but DNA with you? They're not strangers anymore, I countered. And this isn't an either-or situation. I can have relationships with both my families. No, Dad stated firmly. You cannot. If you get on that plane to Arizona, you are choosing them over us. And I want you to understand what that means. Are you threatening me? I asked incredulously. I'm being honest with you. For once, someone is being honest with you. His words cut deep. If you pursue this relationship with these people, you are no longer welcome in this family. No holidays, no phone calls, no inheritance, nothing. Mom gasped, but didn't contradict him. I could hear her crying in the background. Dad, please, I begged. Don't do this. Don't make me choose. You've already chosen, he replied coldly. You chose the moment you started this search behind our backs. I ended the call in tears, collapsing into Julian's arms. How can they do this? I sobbed. How can they just discard me after 34 years? They're scared and hurt, Julian said, stroking my hair. They're reacting from a place of fear. Maybe once they've had time to think, they'll reconsider. In the days before our trip, I made multiple attempts to reach out to my parents. I left voicemails, sent texts, and even wrote a heartfelt email explaining my perspective. All went unanswered. It was as if I had suddenly ceased to exist in their world. The morning of our flight to Phoenix, I made one final call. Mom answered, her voice distant and formal. Tomasa, there's nothing more to discuss. Your father's position hasn't changed, and neither has mine. Please respect our wishes and don't contact us again. The flight to Arizona was a blur of tears and anxiety. Julian held my hand throughout, occasionally murmuring words of encouragement. You're doing what you need to do, he reminded me. Your parents are making their choice too, as painful as it is. 3 weeks after our return from Arizona, a certified letter arrived from my parents' lawyer. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and read the formal legal language that confirmed my worst fears. This letter serves as official notification that Harold and Martha Williams have revised their will and trust documents to remove Tomasa Williams Thompson as beneficiary, it stated coldly. Furthermore, Mrs. Thompson is hereby informed that any attempt to contest these changes will be vigorously defended. An additional paragraph explained that my parents had transferred ownership of family heirlooms previously promised to me to various cousins. The family home I had grown up in, the investments I had always been told would someday be mine, all now designated for other relatives or charities. I had been completely erased from their legacy, as if I had never been their daughter at all. The emotional impact was devastating. Despite Julian's assurances that we were financially secure without any inheritance, the symbolic rejection cut deeper than any financial loss. In their eyes, I was no longer family. The identity I had built over 34 years felt suddenly unstable, as if the foundation beneath me had crumbled. Julian's parents, David and Catherine, were horrified when they learned what had happened. "This isn't what parents do," Catherine insisted during a long phone call. "No matter how hurt or angry they are." David, a retired psychology professor, offered perspective. "Their reaction says more about their insecurities than about your actions," he explained gently. "You were searching for completion, not replacement. They couldn't see that distinction." Despite the pain, I decided to proceed with developing relationships with my biological family. If my adoptive parents had truly disowned me, I reasoned through tears, then I needed to embrace the family connections that remained open to me. What I couldn't have anticipated was how this decision, born of such heartbreak, would lead to an unexpected new chapter in my story. The morning Julian and I flew to Phoenix was filled with nervous anticipation. "What if they don't like me?" I asked as our plane began its descent. "What if we have nothing in common?" "They're going to love you," Julian assured me, squeezing my hand. "How could they not?" Aaron Cooper had arranged to meet us at a quiet restaurant near our hotel. He was waiting when we arrived, standing as we approached the table. The moment I saw him, something clicked into place. He had my eyes, my smile, even the way he nervously ran his hand through his hair mirrored my own habit. "Tomasa," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Without hesitation, he embraced me. "I never thought I'd see you. Never thought I'd get this chance." Over lunch, Aaron shared his side of the story. He had been a senior in high school when Francine got pregnant. "We were just kids ourselves," he explained. "Both sets of parents insisted on adoption. They arranged everything, barely gave us a choice." "Did you ever try to find me?" I couldn't help asking. Aaron looked down at his plate. "The adoption was closed. They told us we had no rights, that attempting contact would only disrupt your life." He met my gaze. "But I thought about you every year on your birthday. Wondered where you were if you were happy." That afternoon, we met my half-siblings at Aaron's home. Sam, 29, was a software engineer with my same analytical mind. Lily, 26, worked as an elementary school music teacher and shared my creative streak. Both had been shocked to learn of my existence, but welcomed me with genuine warmth. "Dad told us right after your first email," Lily explained. "It was a lot to process, but once the shock wore off, we were just excited to meet you." Sam nodded in agreement. "It's weird, but cool to suddenly have a big sister, especially one who looks so much like us." The physical resemblance was striking. We shared the same dark hair, the same eye shape, even similar mannerisms. Looking at photos of Francine that they shared brought tears to my eyes. My birth mother had the same dimple in her left cheek, the same slight wave to her hair. "She was artistic," Lily told me, showing me a sketchbook filled with Francine's drawings. "She loved to write too. I think that's where your journalism talent comes from." Aaron explained more about the circumstances of my birth. Francine's parents were particularly strict. When they found out she was pregnant, they threatened to kick her out unless she agreed to adoption. My parents weren't much better. They were focused on me going to college, not becoming a teenage father. "Did you love her?" I asked quietly. Aaron's eyes grew distant with memory. "Very much. We were too young, too unprepared for what happened. After the adoption, we tried to stay together, but there was too much pain between us. We separated when we went to different colleges. By the time I felt mature enough to handle being a parent, she had moved on with her life." Over the next several days, I was introduced to aunts, uncles, and cousins from both Aaron and Francine's sides of the family. At a gathering arranged in my honor, Francine's sister Jennifer brought photo albums and mementos of my birth mother. "She would have been so happy to know you were looking for her," Jennifer told me, tears in her eyes. "After she had Sam and Lily, she often wondered about you. She kept a journal where she wrote letters to you that she never sent." Jennifer handed me a worn leather-bound book. "She wanted you to have this if you ever found us. I've been holding on to it for years." The journal contained entries spanning nearly 2 decades, letters Francine had written to the daughter she never knew. Reading her words that night in our hotel room, I felt connected to her in a way I hadn't thought possible. Her voice came through so clearly, her regrets, her hopes, her love for the child she had given away. "I wonder what color your eyes are," one early entry read. "If you have my dimple or your father's laugh. I hope your parents tell you how much we loved you, even though we couldn't keep you." Julian held me as I cried, overwhelmed by the bittersweet discovery of a mother's love I had never known. During our visit, Aaron mentioned family property in rural Washington state. "It belonged to your great-aunt Margaret Francine's aunt. Beautiful old farmhouse on 50 acres. Margaret was quite a character, lived alone her whole life writing mystery novels under a pen name." "Is she still alive?" I asked, curious about this eccentric-sounding relative. "No, she passed away a few months ago, actually. Never married, no children. The family's still sorting out her estate." As our week in Arizona drew to a close, I felt both fulfilled and conflicted. Meeting my biological family had answered questions I had carried my entire life, but the rift with my adoptive parents cast a shadow over the experience. On our last day, Aaron hugged me goodbye with tears in his eyes. "We have so much time to make up for," he said. "This is just the beginning." Upon returning home, I made one final attempt at reconciliation with my adoptive parents. I sent a heartfelt letter describing my experience in Arizona, emphasizing that meeting my biological family had filled gaps in my identity, without diminishing the importance of the parents who raised me. The letter was returned unopened, marked "refused," in my father's handwriting. A week later, we received another legal notice, this one informing us that the family trust had been amended to specifically exclude me by name, closing any potential loopholes. The finality of their rejection sent me into a depression that lasted for weeks. Julian suggested therapy, and I began sessions with Dr. Melissa Kennedy, who specialized in adoption-related trauma and family estrangement. "What you're experiencing is a form of double rejection," she explained during an early session. "First by your birth parents, through the adoption, though, that was clearly under duress, and now by your adoptive parents. It's natural to question your value and place in the world." Through therapy, I began to process the complex emotions of my situation. Julian remained my rock, his love and acceptance never wavering, even as I struggled to redefine myself in the wake of such profound loss. 6 months after our trip to Arizona, a letter arrived from a law firm in Seattle, Washington. The envelope looked official, and my first thought was that it contained more legal documents from my adoptive parents. I almost didn't open it. "You should see what it is," Julian encouraged, noticing my hesitation. "It might be important." Inside was a formal letter from the firm of Benson and Hargrove, requesting my presence at the reading of a will. "As a named beneficiary in the last will and testament of Margaret Eleanor Cooper, your attendance is requested on April 15th at our Seattle offices." "Margaret Cooper?" Julian questioned, reading over my shoulder. "Isn't that the great-aunt Erin mentioned, the one with the farmhouse in Washington?" I nodded, confused. "But I never met her. Why would I be in her will?" We called Erin that evening for clarification. "Margaret was always the family rebel," he explained. "Francine was her favorite niece. After Francine died, Margaret kept track of her children, including you, from a distance. She must have known about you through me. I mentioned I'd found you when I visited her last year." Julian and I arranged time off work and flew to Seattle the following month. The law office was located in a historic downtown building with sweeping views of Puget Sound. Several people were already gathered in the conference room when we arrived, most of them with the Cooper family resemblance I was beginning to recognize in myself. James Benson, a silver-haired attorney with kind eyes, conducted the proceedings. After introductions and formalities, he began reading Margaret's will. "To my great-niece, Tomasa Williams Thompson, whom I never had the privilege to meet, but have followed from afar, I leave my primary residence, Wildwood Farm, including all structures, the surrounding 50 acres of land, and the contents therein." I gasped audibly. Julian gripped my hand as Mr. Benson continued. "Additionally, I leave to Tomasa my investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $850,000, and all intellectual property rights to my literary works published under the name M.E. Cooper." Shocked murmurs rippled through the room. A woman across the table, who had been introduced as Margaret's cousin, stared at me with undisguised resentment. After the formal reading concluded, Mr. Benson handed me a sealed envelope. "Margaret left this for you as well, her personal letter." We retreated to a small cafe nearby before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter on elegant stationery. "Dear Tomasa," it began. "Though we never met in person, I have followed your life through Aaron over the years. I know about your success as a journalist, your marriage, and recently your search for your biological family. Francine would have been overjoyed to know you sought her out. I never had children of my own, a choice I made to pursue my writing career in an era when women were expected to choose between family and profession. Your mother Francine faced a different, impossible choice at a young age. By leaving you Wildwood Farm, I hope to right a small portion of the wrong done to you at birth, the separation from your biological family. This property has been in the Cooper family for generations. It belongs to you now, a tangible connection to your roots. The house contains my library, including first editions and unpublished manuscripts. There are also journals and photographs of Francine from the summers she spent with me. Perhaps these will help you know the mother you lost. Live well, write truthfully, and remember that family is more complex and beautiful than simple biology or legal documents. Your great-aunt Margaret." Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. Julian read the letter after me, his expression moving from surprise to deep emotion. "This is incredible," he said finally. "She wanted to give you back a piece of your heritage." The other relatives at the will reading had varying reactions to my unexpected inheritance. Some were openly hostile, clearly having expected to receive portions of Margaret's estate themselves. Others, particularly those who had known Francine well, were more accepting, seeing the poetic justice in Margaret's decision. That afternoon, we drove to Wildwood Farm, located about an hour outside Seattle. The property was breathtaking, with rolling hills, ancient oak trees, and a Victorian farmhouse that looked like something from a storybook. The house itself was in need of renovation, but structurally sound, with a wraparound porch and intricate gingerbread trim. Inside, we found room after room filled with books, artwork, and antique furniture. Margaret's office contained a vintage typewriter, stacks of manuscripts, and shelves lined with her published novels under the name M.E. Cooper Mystery Stories I had never read, but now eagerly anticipated exploring. In one bedroom, carefully preserved, were Francine's belongings from her summer visits. Sketchbooks filled with drawings, journals containing her teenage thoughts, photographs showing her sitting on the very porch we had just crossed. In one photo, a 17-year-old Francine sat with her hand resting on her pregnant belly. On the back, written in faded ink, "Francine, 5 months along with baby. Summer at Wildwood." That baby was me. As we explored the house, Julian and I began to see possibilities. "We could restore this place," he suggested, running his hand along a dusty bookshelf. "Make it a home." "What about our jobs?" I asked, though I was already imagining writing at the antique desk in Margaret's study, looking out over the same view she had used for inspiration. "We could work remotely, at least part-time," Julian mused, "or find positions nearby. Seattle has newspapers publishing houses." That evening, sitting on the porch swing, as the sun set over the rolling hills of what was now my property, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since discovering my adoption. Here, surrounded by the history of my biological family, I could feel roots extending beneath me, anchoring me to a past I had only recently discovered. When we returned home, I submitted my resignation from the newspaper. Julian arranged to work remotely for his publishing company 3 days a week, with in-office meetings twice monthly. We put our house on the market and began planning our move to Washington. Before leaving, I made one final attempt to share my news with my adoptive parents, sending a letter detailing Margaret's inheritance and our plans to relocate. Like my previous communication, it was returned unopened. The property I had inherited included substantial investments that would cover the costs of renovation and provide financial security as we established new lives in Washington. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my adoptive parents had cut me out of their will, a woman I had never met had made me her primary beneficiary. As we packed our belongings, I discovered another treasure in Margaret's papers, an unpublished manuscript titled Cooper Family History, documenting generations of stories, including what she knew of Francine's life. The final chapter contained a blank space with a note in the margin for Tomasa's story when she is found. 1 year after inheriting Wildwood Farm, Julian and I had transformed the property into our home. The Victorian farmhouse had been carefully restored, maintaining its historic character while updating the infrastructure. Margaret's library became my writing studio, her books and manuscripts preserved on built-in shelves along with my own growing collection. The renovation process had been therapeutic, giving me a physical project to focus on while continuing to heal emotionally from my adoptive parents' rejection. Each repaired floorboard and freshly painted wall represented rebuilding my own identity, creating something beautiful from what had been broken. My relationship with my biological family had deepened over the months. Aaron visited frequently, helping with projects around the property and sharing stories about Francine. My half-siblings Sam and Lily spent holidays with us, filling the farmhouse with laughter that echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. Aunt Margaret would have loved seeing the place like this, Lily commented during Thanksgiving dinner in our renovated dining room. She always said the house needed children's voices. That comment took on new meaning when, after nearly 2 years of trying, I discovered I was pregnant. The fertility issues that had initially led to the discovery of my adoption had resolved, perhaps due to reduced stress or simply timing. Julian and I were overjoyed, and Aaron wept when we shared the news. "A grandchild," he said wonderingly. "Francine would have been so happy." We converted one of the upstairs bedrooms into a nursery, painting the walls with scenes from Margaret's children's books, a series about woodland creatures I had discovered among her unpublished works. Julian and I had decided to publish them, establishing a small press using part of my inheritance. Another part of the property had been transformed as well. The old carriage house had been renovated into a writer's retreat, honoring both Margaret and Francine's creative legacies. We offered residencies to emerging writers, particularly those exploring themes of family identity and belonging. My pregnancy progressed smoothly, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of the previous years. As my due date approached, I often found myself sitting in the garden Margaret had cultivated, imagining her tending the same flowers, wondering if Francine had walked these same paths when she was pregnant with me. In my 7th month, an unexpected letter arrived bearing my mother's handwriting. Unlike my returned communications, this one had been sent directly from her without my father's knowledge, according to the note inside. "Dearest Tomasa," it began, "I've thought of you every day since our painful separation. Harold remains firm in his position, but I can no longer bear the silence between us. A mutual friend mentioned your pregnancy, and I cannot reconcile being estranged from my only child as she becomes a mother herself." The letter continued, expressing regret, without quite admitting wrongdoing typical of my mother's conflict-avoidant nature. She requested permission to visit alone, to see the property I had inherited, and to reconnect before her grandchild was born. Julian was cautiously supportive when I showed him the letter. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his primary concern, as always, my emotional well-being. After careful consideration and discussion with my therapist, I invited her to visit the following month. "This is a chance for healing," Dr. Kennedy had suggested. "With appropriate boundaries, reconnection with your adoptive mother could be positive for both of you." Martha Williams arrived on a sunny spring afternoon, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Our reunion on the porch was awkward at first, her eyes taking in my pregnant form with a mixture of joy and sorrow. "The house is beautiful," she commented as I showed her around. "You've made it your own." In Margaret's library, surrounded by family photographs, including some of Francine I had framed, we finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I'm sorry," Mom said simply. "We were wrong to react as we did. Fear of losing you made us push you away instead." "You did lose me," I replied quietly. "Not because I found my biological family, but because you forced me to choose." "I know." Her eyes filled with tears. "Your father still believes it was the right decision. His pride won't let him admit otherwise. But I've missed you terribly, Tomasa." Our conversation that afternoon was difficult but necessary. She asked about Aaron and my half-siblings, showing genuine interest in the biological family she had once forbidden me to contact. I shared Francine's journal with her, allowing her to read the words of the young woman who had given birth to the daughter they raised. "She loved you," Mom acknowledged, wiping away tears. "In a different way than we did, but just as deeply." Before she left, I introduced her to Aaron, who had arrived for his weekly visit. Their meeting was civil, even warm, as they found common ground in their connection to me. Watching them interact, I glimpsed the possibility of a blended family I had once thought impossible. "Will you come back when the baby is born?" I asked as she prepared to leave. "I'd like my child to know both grandmothers, even if one is only through stories and photographs." "I'd like that very much," she replied, hugging me carefully around my pregnant belly. "And perhaps in time your father might reconsider as well." 2 months later, our daughter was born. We named her Francine Margaret, honoring both my birth mother and the great aunt, whose generosity had changed our lives. Mom was present for the birth, having arrived a week earlier to help prepare. Aaron and his wife came the following day, bringing gifts and tears of joy. In the quiet hours of early motherhood, nursing my daughter in the rocking chair that had belonged to Margaret, I began writing again. What started as personal reflection evolved into a memoir about family identity and the complicated nature of belonging. The words flowed easily, as if Margaret's spirit guided my pen in the same room where she had written her novels decades before. Using contacts from Margaret's literary career that I discovered through her papers, I found a publisher interested in the memoir. The advance allowed us to establish a scholarship fund for adoptees, searching for biological family, a cause that had become deeply important to me through my own experience. My adoptive father remained estranged, though Mom reported he had looked at the photos of Francine Margaret she had shown him. "He keeps one on his desk," she confided during a visit, "though he pretends it isn't there when I mention it." This small detail gave me hope that someday reconciliation might be possible, though I had learned to accept that some relationships cannot be forced to heal. Family I had discovered came in many forms, some chosen, some biological, some created through shared experience. On Francine Margaret's first birthday, we gathered on the porch of Wildwood Farm, a celebration that included Julian's parents, Aaron and his wife, my half-siblings, and my adoptive mother. Looking around at these people who had come into my life through such different paths, I felt a sense of completeness I had once thought impossible. The inheritance that had changed everything wasn't just the property or the money, though these had provided stability and opportunity. The true inheritance was the sense of identity and belonging that came from knowing my complete story, from embracing all the complex threads that had woven together to create my life. As we cut the birthday cake, Julian squeezed my hand, his eyes reflecting the contentment I felt. Whatever the future held, whatever relationships healed or remained broken, I had found my place in the world. Not solely as Harold and Martha's daughter, or as Francine and Aaron's child, but as Tomasa, a woman who had discovered that family could be lost, found created and chosen sometimes all at once. Have you ever discovered something about your family that changed your perception of your identity? How did you handle that discovery? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about family secrets, unexpected inheritances, and the journey to find where we truly belong. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the family we create is even more powerful than the ones we're born into or raised by.